That was Ken Haas, but it felt right. Feeling good, feeling right. It's Saturday night. Actually, it's not. It's a Tuesday morning.
It's Tuesday morning, bright and early.
Ken, always a pleasure to see you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Here we are in the warm bosom of the Wildwood Lair to discuss all things Reverend 2017.
I'm always more comfortable here in front of my Marshall collection.
This phalanx of...
I hate to leave it every year. But
well, we appreciate you giving.
It's the kind of guy I am.
Giving of your phalanx of amplification. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds good. Tell us a little bit about what 20 years means to you.
20 years.
20 doggone years.
As we roll into 2017, Reverend is celebrating 20 years. And we're doing it with these fabulous double agents that we're sitting amongst.
Indeed, we're amongst it.
We are, we're amongst it. Long, 20 years is a milestone.
It is.
Yeah, it's a milestone for any business. But we're Joe and I we couldn't be prouder. We're still here. We're still kicking. They said it couldn't be done.
But you know what? They were wrong.
You said it couldn't be done.
I didn't say anything.
You never did. You never said it couldn't be done. Wildwood certainly never said it couldn't be done. Wildwood's been a supporter of Reverend Guitars since 1998.
We were just talking at breakfast about Stephen Mesplay talking about his glorious single pickup USA-made Reverend, of which
the Hot Shot Junior.
Of all the different guitars that he has, that he's thinking about culling his herd.
Yeah.
He's going to keep that guitar.
Can't let it go. I don't blame him. So.
That's a bold statement.
Yes. Reverend, founded by Mr. Joe Naylor. Joe founded Naylor Amplifiers in the early 90s and gained some knowledge there. Had a buy-sell trade guitar repair shop.
And where was this?
In East Detroit. East of Detroit. They now call it East Point. They used to call it East Detroit. And Joe, a graduate of Roberto Venn School of Luthery in beautiful Tempe, Arizona, started this repair shop and had his hands on every weird, vintage, cool guitar that you could ever imagine, and came up with a very long list of likes and dislikes in his head about individual models, and a few of the things that he praised. And one of the things he wanted to do when he started his own guitar line was make a guitar that didn't have anything weird on it that couldn't be fixed. He wanted touring guys to take these guitars on the road, and if something happens and they break a tuner or they drop something or they lose a bar or lose a knob or whatever, that their local store is going to have what they need to get their guitar back on the stage. And so he came into this with that idea, and he had an idea for a sort of a non-traditional body design that he got a patent for. All the original Reverend models were semi-hollows, combination of plastic and wood, molded plastic outer body ring. Really cool design. And with that platform, Joe started honing in his pickups and his neck shape after a few years. And so the company was launched in '97. We started a guy named Kid Rock.
Kid Rock, also a Detroit City rocker.
Yes, indeed. And Kid Rock's career took off, and Reverend's thing started, Joe's thing started sort of happening around the same time, which culminated with Mr. Kid holding his Reverend Commando on the cover of American Badass. And that opened the door for us, obviously.
We're kind of a couple of American Badasses. In our own small way. In my own small way, I'd like to think I'm a badass.
Anyway, enough about that. Ken, used to play in the local music scene in Detroit and knew Mr. Ritchie peripherally like we all did because we all came up together.
Yes.
And so Reverend caught my attention. I saw one used when the company was only about a year old at a small store in the Detroit area. And I saw the East Point, Michigan on the headstock, and it got me real excited.
Yes.
So I looked him up, and I went and knocked on his door and said, "Hi, Joe Naylor, I'm your new stalker." And which turned into Joe and I becoming pretty good buds.
Excellent.
And he started taking me to NAMM shows. I went first as a guest, and my first NAMM show was, I want to say it was summer of '99. The company was only about 2 years old. And I sold a couple of guitars to the mighty Will Ray.
Oh, indeed.
And
a vicious plectrum-wielding skullduggerist.
Yes, he is. He is. And I, as a longtime fan of him and the Helicasters, and I saw him at the NAMM show, and do you remember your first NAMM show, Greg?
I do indeed.
And
well, actually, I don't.
As a guitar nerd, to see guys like Will Ray just walking around like,
right.
And yeah, it was anyway.
Yeah, I get it.
I sold him a couple of guitars, and Joe was like, "Well, how'd you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He was standing there, and he's a rather tall Raths guy.
Yes, indeed he is.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I believe there is a picture of you, me, and Will circulating from a NAMM show maybe a couple of years ago, and we are all like, anyways.
Tall man.
Will's big dude, big fingers, he shreds. Joe was so happy with me getting a couple guitars to Will that he started taking me to every NAMM show. And that was what sort of started our relationship when then in 2005, I became his sales director. It took me a few years to weasel in hard, but I did. And then in 2010, my lovely wife Penny and I bought the company from Joe and hired Joe back as sort of the art director and, guitar design guru that he always wanted to be. I think as Reverend started growing, Joe was being pulled into more business stuff and pulled away from what he does the best, which is these things in our laps.
Yes.
And so we gave him the freedom to go crazy on the design board, which culminated, right away into a new line of basses in 2010, and then all the stuff that we're doing now, which is just amazing. So that's my brief history with Reverend. So 20 years of Reverend Guitars has been just product itself, just as far as the instruments go, has been the best part of this whole thing. We've, because another thing that's happened throughout the course of 20 years is you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work, Right. And we, it took us a few years, but we kind of figured out what the original designs weren't capable of. We knew what they were capable of, but we had to learn what they weren't capable of. And then Joe, sat down to address those issues and came up with the product offerings that we have now. And so it's been it's been sort of a long ride. It started with all of the bolt-on, semi-hollow phenolic top and back guitars. And then starting around 2004, 2005, Joe had some ideas for some instruments that didn't fit that. When I say didn't fit the mold, I mean literally.
Right.
Didn't fit the mold that we were making for that outer body ring. And so he went to the gentleman in South Korea that was supplying us with our necks, because we knew we loved the necks. And this neck is the Reverend bolt-on neck shape that we've had for 20 years now. And then Joe would design pickups, and we had this gentleman manufacturing the pickups to our specifications. And we were building the bodies in-house, and we put, everything together at our shop in Warren, and we had this really cool guitar. So we knew we had the necks and the pickups thing down, and what Joe wanted to try were some solid body designs.
Aha.
And we started with basically this body shape. This is what we call, this is a double agent OG, but this is our Charger platform, and then this is the Jetstream. This is our double agent W, but our Jetstream body shape. And we had the gentleman in Korea that was doing the necks and the pickups make us some prototypes of some guitar builds. And when we got these guitars in, we, at least in Joe and I's humble opinions, and since, Joe's the one that really matters, these guitars just blew away the stuff we were making. We got these guitars in, and it was one of those, I know I don't want to get a bunch of arguments from the Reverend purists or whatever, but this was my experience. At the time, I was playing live 2 or 3 times a week, and Joe said, hey, come, I got these prototypes in, come, it was the original Warhawk, come get one of these guitars, take it out, tell me what you think. And I, at the time, because humans are resistant to change.
Yes, no, not guitar players.
I know. And I was that guy too. I was like, I was working for Joe part-time, and I was like, oh boy, I don't know. And I got that Warhawk, and I took it to a gig, and I was like, holy, this is
rock.
This is it. This rock. I mean, and so Joe then, without being trapped into the confines of that original molded body shape, Joe started trying X and Y and Z, and we started getting different things in, and we started slowly unleashing them on the public, and the reaction was superb. Dealers loved them. All the artists that we had at the time loved them. I mean, it was very exciting. It was an exciting time. And then this is right around the time that I started working for Joe full time, around 2005. I came in January of 2006. And as a full timer, as opposed to a part timer. So all of this transitioning was sort of happening. And we went for a little while where we offered the original Reverend and the new stuff concurrently for about 6 months, 8 months. And then we went a couple months without even taking an order for the original stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so the writing was kind of on the wall. And so we left it behind. And it wasn't that it wasn't great, you know what I mean? It was just, I guess it was just time to move on.
Yeah.
We felt that what we had to offer now was just a broader range of stuff. And Joe then just lost his mind at the drafting table. And so we established this system where the guitars are built in South Korea by a company called Mir, M-I-R-R. They do fantastic work. It's a 3rd generation plant. I certainly don't own it. The guy has a business in his own right. He builds guitars for a couple other smaller brands. I think we're his biggest customer at this point. The average age of his employee is over 50.
Huh?
And these are people that have been building instruments their whole lives. And for me to try to replicate what they're able to do is just kind of silly at this point. Every once in a while somebody says, oh, the Double Agent's your best-selling guitar. You should do a high-end version of that and make it at your shop in Toledo. I could do that, but it would cost $3,000, and it probably wouldn't be as good as what you're holding in your hand. This guy has this dialed in. So that's what we roll with. And I mean, and as a result, we can sell these guitars for, $9.99, $10.99, $11.99, and they're amazing, and they're dialed in, and they're done. We used mahogany at first for the body woods, and the mahogany was getting a little heavy on some stuff because mahogany tends to get heavy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's inconsistent,
absolutely.
and you certainly have to. So Joe chambered the mahogany to get some of the weight down, and then the guitars were a little dark, so we started putting spruce tops on chambered mahogany to put the snap back in, and those sounded great. And then around 2008, Carina became available to us, and we went to Carina for the bodywood of all the guitars.
So Carina, let's talk about that. So I think people have in their imagination, they think of, Carina Explorers and Carina Flying Vs are like a gajillion dollars.
Yeah.
So what is it about this Carina that is affordable that you guys can make these guitars?
Carina is affordable. It's the wood of the limba tree. White limba, specifically, grows in the southern hemisphere like sumac or oak or something grows up here.
Okay, so it's all over the damn place.
Yeah, right. And you turn your back for a couple of years and you've got a forest of the stuff growing again. So it's a very renewable wood source, which is great. And it's used a lot in furniture making. And which the original Carina guitars, that was, these guitar companies used to source their woods from the same companies, obviously, as furniture companies and things of that nature. So those, original pieces, that's where it sort of came from. And so it's really not that expensive, I guess, as it is. It's got this sort of vintage guitar mystique about it, which is really cool. But it has similar tonal properties to mahogany, maybe with a little more enhanced upper mids if you want to get really weird about it. But I mean, it's pretty close. It's got that girth,
Right.
Yet it's consistently lighter weight. What you'll notice is on some of our natural models, and you can even see it on the Violin Brown backs here, you'll see some little spots in it here or there. that just occur naturally in the wood. I think the tone of the wood is more important than any little spots that you might see in it. Wood has character. Wood's supposed to have stuff.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I see some really high-end Carina guitars where they found pieces that don't have any of that black stuff in it. And I think that's why they cost so much, because they've really sourced that to try to find those perfect pieces. I'm more worried about, I'm making guitars for players, and I'm making guitars for pros, and that's why you see so many people touring with our instruments from indie rock, Warped Tour style, punker emo bands to, legends like Pete Anderson and Rick Vito and Reeves and The Cure and all these great players. We are building guitars that are meant to be taken out on the road and played. And so a little spot in the wood doesn't.
It's not going to
really.
It's not a game changer.
It's not a game changer. Because, the point is they're professionally made guitars.
Yes.
That are made for professionals and that are affordable for everyone.
Indeed. Which is important.
That's what we do. And so all of this has culminated, all of that stuff that we just talked about has culminated into this year's 20th anniversary double agent guitars.
Yes.
We make two double agents, two versions of the double agents. One is the double agent W, which is this. W for Wilkinson.
Aha, I know him.
Trev?
Yes.
Wilkinson makes, in my opinion, you know what they say about opinions.
Well,
I don't want to talk about it again. He makes one of the best two-point trems in the business. This Wilkinson unit is kick-ass. We've talked about this in this chair, in this studio before. Everything on this trem locks down. Setup, you have to loosen some stuff with some Allen wrenches, which a lot of people don't like, but then once you set the intonation, you lock everything down. This is one mass of metal, and that translates into initial attack, and boom, there's no loose springs or anything in this unit. Once it's clamped down, it's done. The tuning stability is incredible. The knife point edges are excellent. We are launching a new nut for 2017 to coincide with our 20th anniversary. This is called Bonite.
I like the sound of it.
Bonite.
Or Bonite, as they say.
I prefer Bonite. This is a synthetic bone material. It has all these slippery, slidey qualities of the graphite nuts that we used to use before, but it captures the essence of the tonal quality of the bone nut, and which is
you
really
got the tone of the bone, you got the slide of the graphite.
Yeah, a lot of guys like the tone of the bone. I always think it's funny when you see somebody really going off about it, because it's like, well, the second you fret a chord, it's kind of it's out of play,
right?
But hey, it's thing, and this really works, and it seems to be a little bit more durable. I've had one on my guitar now for a while, and I am trem crazy. And
Sir Tremolot.
And locking tuners, the 20th anniversary models. This is the OG, we call it, the double agent OG. When we launched the double agent in 2006, it was a hardtail on this platform. Eventually, over time, the double agent morphed into being a trem model, and I started getting a lot of requests. Hey, why don't you make the original double agent hardtail anymore? So we brought it back and we called it the OG for original guitar.
I like it.
Yeah.
This is just a beautiful specimen right here.
This is a chronic blue flame maple.
I like to call it the Walter White blue, if you're into that kind of stuff. Wait a minute. But it is a delicious blue, and I like the blue offset with, we've seen this before on the Billy Corgan model.
Yes, brushed aluminum pickguard.
I think that those two together is a bold,
it looks good
duopoly of sonic and visual excellence.
Trans black flame maple, natural. That aluminum,
that's beautiful.
That aluminum guard on the natural maple top. It looks kick-ass. And then we're talking about violin brown backs, which we've been rolling out on more and more guitars. I really like the two-tone look of all of these things.
Yeah, beautiful. I think orange is kick-ass as well.
Yeah. This is a Railhammer.
Right.
also a Joe Naylor creation. This is the hyper vintage version of the Railhammer. The idea here is that, should I call people out? Should I start naming names?
Get it.
You don't care if I start naming names?
Bring it.
Here's how the Railhammer thing started. Blade pickups sound kick-ass for high gain tones. I mean, just rhythm tones. Monstrous. The reason, the blades take a very small slice of the magnetic field that's being generated by the string, so they do this natural compression thing. So if you think about Pantera's rhythm sound, Dime's rhythm sound, just awesome crushing with more gain than humanly necessary, yet it still sounds incredible, right? So you take that tone. The flip side is those blades being underneath of all the strings. When you get underneath the plain strings and you're taking that small slice of the field, it starts to get a little shrill. So Joe's idea was, let's get that heavy rhythm sound and offset it by using these oversized Alnico slugs underneath of the plain strings, so we have a sweeter, chimier top end while we still have that tight bottom. So he started experimenting and hand winding some of these pickups. He came up with the name Railhammer. And we started screwing around with them a little bit. And what we quickly realized was, not only do these things work great for high gain tones, but they work great for clean sounds too, for all of the same reasons. To keep the high end tight, and if you play a thumb and finger style, which of course you do a lot better than I do, but if you're doing some, your thumb notes are held tight and clean.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're never really farting out on the bottom end. And so the pickups have started sort of getting a life of their own. Joe and Railhammer, obviously we offer replacement pickups to everyone for everything. And there's a lot of different versions of the Railhammers, but we use them quite a bit. In the Reverend models, a lot of our signature artists have their own pickups. Bob Balch from Fu Manchu has his own version of the Railhammers in his Sig model. We're about to launch a signature model with a gentleman named Kyle Shutt from the band The Sword, and he has his own version of these pickups that just have little tweaks in the EQ, which is done by windings and gauge wire and all these kind of things that Joe has developed with these guys. But the pickups have taken on sort of their own thing, which is great. So what we decided to do with the 20th anniversary guitar was sort of incorporate all of our, take our classic model and then incorporate some of our modern features on it, like the brushed aluminum pickguard and the Railhammer bridge pickup and all of that happy mess. All Reverend guitars have the, do you remember? I'm gonna quiz you.
The bass contour, I like to call it the girth enhancer.
Girth enhancer. It's really more of a cut than it is an add.
That's interesting.
So if you think about the guitar with the control all the way up, think about the guitar being wide open to the amp.
Okay.
And as you roll the bass contour out, you're adjusting the low frequency, by removing specific things that Joe's deemed correct.
I get it. So this is with it off. I love it because it adds so much, you get so much more, I like to say dynamic control. DT. Dynamic control, fellas! Sometimes I need some dynamic control out of these guys. Look at them. Look at their judgment.
I think we're putting them, do we need to be more animated?
There's some judgment in their eyes. They're looking at me with judgment.
What are you running through?
I'm running through the Friedman Small Box 50 head and 212 combo.
And where's all the gain coming from?
It's coming from the amplificator.
So you saw with the bass, this is great. I love that he's playing through that amp and it has that kind of gain. You can hear what the bass contour control does to the gain in the amplifier.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the coolest thing. I have one of Joe's old amps. I have a Naylor Super Drive 60. And it does a similar thing with that where if you really crank the lows and the mids on the amp, and turn that control off, then as you roll that control in, you start overdriving the bottom of the amp and you have like a gain control on your guitar.
Right. Which is totes cool.
Totes cool.
Can you
Totes
dig it?
McGoats.
Every time you got, I don't know.
Who says totes?
I don't know.
What are you, 50?
We've become so lazy with abbreviating every word.
It's like talking to my kid. Totes cool.
Totes.
Totes.
Totes, my goats.
Why don't you play that pineapple pen song?
When I play that, I almost feel like I have hair again.
Yep.
That's right. Here in the Wildwood Lair, anything can happen. But I did want to note that on these particular... That you've got the girth enhancer, the bass contour up here, but on these models with the tremolo, it is down on the control panel.
Yeah.
Just as something a little diff.
Just to confuse you. No, we actually refer to this we refer to these as our single cut and our double cut. And there's just a different pickguard, different control layout.
Got it.
With the trem, we wanted the control layout to be a little more familiar. On this guitar, with this control plate, I really don't like the look of 3 knobs on this control plate.
I got you.
I like the look of the control plate very much, and especially on this with the aluminum and everything, and the more chrome, the better. But you can't put a third control.
I can dig
that, so we put it in the upper horn.
I think it looks cool as hell.
Yeah, man.
Now
I like it up here on this too because it's again talking about the thumb playing. You know, I enjoy it a lot. I'm not as proficient at it as you are, fella.
Wait a minute.
But when thumb playing, this is in a handy position.
Yeah.
You know.
I can dig it.
Yeah.
I can dig it all. Now we got locking tuners on here.
Always.
Which is a good thing.
We put locking tuners on everything. Once locking tuners were created, once you play a guitar or with locking tuners,
it's over.
Going back is
difficult.
It's very difficult. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now the neck shape on these is very, very friendly. You know, it almost feels like there's a V, but there's not. It's a very comfortable.
We call it a medium C.
Okay.
It's got some shoulders, but it doesn't feel like a bat.
Right.
You know?
It's very comfy.
Like I said, we've been rocking that neck shape for 18 years, 19 years.
It's very
of
comfortable.
Our 20 years. Did I mention 20 years?
20 years is a long time.
Years. See this? What's that say? This is 1997 to 2017.
I like to say, anytime you could put 20 years behind you at any point, it's like bonus round. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
We're in the bonus round, y'all.
What were you doing 20 years ago?
I had my own band, doing my own thing. I don't know how many records out at that point, 7, 6. I was a productive young lad.
Yeah.
I wasn't fooling around.
Yeah. Did you tour a lot?
I did, actually. And caused a lot of trouble.
Hold on. Let's hear about Greg for a minute. Yeah, I like this.
Well, yeah, you know.
So did you go to college?
I did. I went to school for music at a school in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. I majored in jazz guitar, but really I majored in beer. I'm going to be honest with you. There was a brewery there, Point Beer, a delicious nectar. I always wanted to have my own band. So I got done. I lived in Minneapolis for a while, but was in Milwaukee, had my own band, became pretty popular in that area, and then started to make forays out into the world from there. And I've been able to kind of maintain my entire career from living in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is a good thing, especially when you start reproducing. That's a good community to reproduce in.
Absolutely.
What? That sounds weird. But you know, from being Detroit, not a dissimilar situation.
Yeah. No, Detroit, Toledo. Reverend's based in Toledo.
That's right.
We moved to Toledo in January of last year, January of 2016.
Yes.
And it's been great, you know. A couple of the key people stayed and moved with us. Zach Green sets up all the Reverend guitars.
Yes.
And he came to Toledo with us and seems to be very happy there.
And Klinger was from Toledo.
Tony Pacos and the almighty Toledo Mud Hens.
Exactly, which we've heard about those Mud Hens.
We have a great minor league ballpark in Toledo. And Toledo's a really fun place to live. It's got a really vibrant music scene.
That's good.
And I started doing gigs there a lot, and eventually I got pulled into the whole Toledo thing. I joined a band from there that was doing really well around the time I started messing around with Naylor in the late 90s, and have never looked back.
Indeed.
As it were. Never looked back.
Midwest living, we're taking what they're giving. Oh.
And, you know, we're not just taking these... we talked about the South Korea thing, and I look at this as an advantage reverend. I've taken advantage of this gentleman's It was the gentleman who runs our factory. It was his grandfather's place. And I've taken advantage of all of his years of experience to build these fine creations of Mr. Naylor. And then I don't just have a building where we take boxes and put them in other boxes and ship guitars around the globe. Every guitar comes into our facility in Toledo, Ohio, and goes through the Reverend shop, where we have techs do real setups on the guitars, and not like, it's good. No, I mean, we're doing nut slots, fret ends, and we are intonating and checking every inch of every guitar before they go out of our shop. And then it's been through our shop because Mr. Green puts his ZSG and the serial number on the back of all the headstocks when they're done. And then from Toledo, they go all over the world. Yeah. And I think it's fun because from Toledo, they go back to Australia, New Zealand.
Right. Come around the world to go back.
They're world travelers by the time they get into your hands. But that's a good thing.
It is indeed.
We've got a pretty unique situation going, and we're making something really, really cool that you can afford.
That's right, which is important. Rock and roll is an important thing to be able to afford. Of course, it's not just rock and roll anymore. It's every iteration of musical activity.
Yes,
it is. Find their way into vintage-ish people, but also we were discussing at our breakfast repast this morning that a lot of the youngsters are embracing these axes to engage in their musical forays.
Yes, indeed. And we had some cool new SIG models this year from some young bands.
Music, friendship in the air.
This guy here gigs out with one of our baritones, one of our descent baritones.
I love that damn thing.
Yeah.
I got this brand new jam. I'm going to be recording on that thing. I'm going to video it when I do record it, and I'm going to send it to you so you can savor the baritonish jams that come forth.
And then, of course, we have a mutual friend, Trev.
Yes, absolutely.
Who does the trems that we do on our trem equipped guitars. He's a good guy. He does quite a bit of work with Italia, too, which is the gentleman that owns our factory. Italia is his company.
Okay.
So, it's all one big musical.
Yes.
It really is.
But this is a good thing.
Yeah, man. You better believe it.
It's a good thing.
So my name's Ken, and this is Greg, and we've been here at Wildwood talking about Reverend's 20th anniversary.
20 years of glorious instruments for your perusal and defilement. We encourage you to do so with great vehemence and continued savagery. And stay tuned for further videos. Yeah. With Ken and I here for Reverend 2017 Axes of Doom.
Let's make some noise on these things.
Let's do it.